Shalom, beloveds of the King. Praise Abba Yahuwah. Here we are once again coming together in order to be able to look at our powerful prophetic book of Yeshayahu, truly a prophet set apart for the Father for a time such as the time that he lived in. And what a powerful prophet he truly was for the Father. And as we are going to look at this chapter 44 today, what a profound chapter for the time and the season that we find ourselves in right now. As we have entered into the 6th month, and as we have entered into the 6th month in this month of Elul, as we are preparing ourselves for this time of the feasts ahead of us, there should always be a preparation before we enter into the feasts, and this is where we are renting our hearts, where the King is now in the field. Yahushua is in the field right now, beckoning us, drawing us back to him, so that we may come into this place of where we truly look within our hearts to see what is there that is not pleasing to him. And in this chapter, the Father is going to really challenge us to say he is the only one. Who else will we put our trust and our faith in? Who else will we look to apart from him? He's the only one that is worthy to be praised. Let us pray. Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you, my Father. I thank you for this time, and I thank you for this revelation that you are allowing us to be able to read in this time. And Father, I just want to thank you that your word is so rich, and your word is so deep, and your word speaks straight into our hearts, and your word is a sword that comes to cut the bone from the marrow. Abba, truly we are in an hour now where it's not about us just hearing the word anymore. It is about us having to hear the word, repent, turn from that which is not right, and do what is right in your eyes. Abba Yahuwah, you are really wanting a people now. This is the people that you are drawing close unto yourself right now. A people that are going to be able to be set apart unto you. A people that you have already spoken of before the foundations of the earth. You had a people that were going to praise you, that were going to walk in your ways, that were going to give glory and honor to your name. Abba Yahuwah, I thank you that as we come into a close of a dispensation, before we start the new dispensation of the millennial reign, because ultimately that is what you are preparing people for right now. You are not preparing people for heaven. You are preparing people for a kingdom. And that was the reason why Yeshua came, was to be able to prepare people for a kingdom. And this is a kingdom to come, and there is going to be 1,000-year millennial reign with the King in the kingdom. And Abba Yahuwah, let us set our lives apart. Let us reinstate our minds to understand that it's all about a kingdom. It's not about this world and this life and this lifetime, but are we preparing ourselves to reign and rule with the King for the 1,000-year millennial reign? And when that is over, then it will be for eternity. And eternity is a very, very long time. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you. I thank you that you are preparing a people now, that you are doing a deep work in people's hearts, that this is not just about going to church, but this is about a relationship. This is about returning back to the Garden of Eden and becoming the people that you created us to be right from the beginning. And so, Father, what a privilege we have in order to be living in the time that we are, when it's not a lamb that is going to come for us, but it's going to be the Lion of the tribe of Yehudah that is roaring for a people to return back to the Father. And so what a privilege we have to live in this time. And so, Father, I just want to thank you that you will open up the verses of this chapter to us, that we will understand it precept upon precept, line upon line, and that we may be those that will be faithful to you in order to not just be hearers of the word, but doers of the word, that we will truly understand to Shema, to hear and to obey. And so, Abba Yahuwah, I just want to thank you that you alone are the one that is going to open up the very words that comes from your heartbeat to us in this day, in Yahushua's name. Amen. Praise Abba. And so we are looking at chapter 44 and we read, but now hear, so now hear, now Shema, now hear, now Shema, O Yaakov, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. So he's speaking to those chosen, set apart ones. Now hear, obey, receive instruction, obey that which I'm wanting to tell you, because I am speaking. I am wanting you to hear. I'm wanting you to Shema. I'm wanting you to listen. I'm wanting you to obey. I'm wanting you to be obedient. I'm wanting you to understand. I'm wanting you to listen and to yield to what he says. Whom I have chosen. He's speaking to Yaakov, my servant, and Israel, whom I have chosen. These are his chosen, set apart ones. Thus said Yahuwah, who made you and formed you from the womb, who helps you. Do not fear, O Yaakov, my servant, and Yashuran, whom I have chosen. So once again, he tells us in this chapter that we are not to fear. So you see, what is the order of the day? What was the order of the day last year? Men's hearts failed them for fear. Men died because of fear. Because men's hearts will fail them because of fear. You know, fear can do such things to a body people do not understand. When fear grips you, your heart will go into spasm that you can even have a heart attack because of fear. And there are so many sicknesses and illnesses that will come upon a person's body because of fear. Fear will break down your immune system to allow your body to be able to bring upon diseases. And that's why last year, with this whole virus, last year and the beginning of this year, all these viruses that were going around and all this fear-mongering that was going around, and how many people landed up in hospital because their hearts feared and they did not stand by faith with the Father. And as much as people were speaking, saying, do not go to hospital, people went to hospital and then never came out of hospital because they went into hospital because of fear. And then it just made matters worse. And so that's why he speaks to his children to say, fear not. Do not fear. What do you have to fear when Abba Yahuwah is the one who's holding you in the palm of his hands? If you are to perish, you will perish, but he's the one who holds your life in the palm of his hand. And who else should we put our trust and our faith in? And that is why he's been setting a precedence, and now today in this chapter he's going to make it very clear, who are we going to trust? Because you need to understand, beloveds of the King, the times ahead us is going to get dark. And when it's really dark, and when things are really going to get tough, are you going to run to him, or are you going to run to the idols of this world? Who will we run to? And so now he uses a term, Yashuran. So I don't say Yeshu, because it's Yashuran. So what does Yashuran mean? Yashuran means upright one. It's an upright one. So he's speaking about his servant, and he's speaking about the servant Yaakov to be the upright one. It's symbolic of a name of Israel, describing her ideal character. So understand, we should be Yashuran, like Yasharal. We are not Israel, but Yasharal, and we are Yashuran, because at the end of the day, Yashuran means upright one, and it's also a term for endurement, for one who has wrestled and endured, for one who has been trialed and tested and has endured, and therefore they are upright of heart. And this is the character that the Father is looking for in His chosen vessels in this hour. For I pour water on a thirsty and floods on the dry ground. I pour my Spirit on your seed and my blessing on your offspring. So let's have a look at Deuteronomy chapter 32. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 32. Sometimes I carry on and I don't look at my notes. Deuteronomy 32. There is a message for us in Deuteronomy chapter 32. Let's have a look at Deuteronomy chapter 32 from verses 9 to 17. And he says, for the portion of Yahuwah is his people, Yaakov, his allotted inheritance. He found him in a wilderness and in a wasted, howling desert. He encompassed him. He made him understand. He watched over him as the apple of his eye. You see, this is Yashuran. Yashuran. It's this people that is the apple of the Father's eye. He made him understand. He watched over him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirs up its nest, flutters over its young, spreading out its wings, taking them up, bearing them on its wings, Yahuwah alone led him, and there was no strange mighty one with him. Wow. And as I am reading this, there is an eagle right here, hovering, using these winds that is blowing to be able to soar. And understand, he's saying, bearing them on its wings, Yahuwah alone led him. And there was no strange mighty one with him. You see, when we are being carried, as I can see this mighty, magnificent bird being carried on eagle's wings, when you are being carried on the wings of an eagle, the eagle uses the winds, which is very windy at the moment, and the eagle uses the wind to soar. And so as we surrender to the Father, we allow him to take us on the winds of his Ruach HaKodesh to soar where he has for us to go. Just think about it. As you surrender to the Father, you allow him to take you on the wings of his Ruach HaKodesh. His perfect will be done for you to be able to allow him to allow you to soar on those eagle's wings. And you soar higher and higher into his presence. And then you are able to fulfill his purposes and his plans. And he says he made him ride on the heights of the earth, and he ate the fruit of the fields, and he made him to draw honey from the rock, and the oil from the flint of the rock, curds from the cattle, and milk of the flock, with fat of the lambs, the rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats with the choicest wheat. And you drank wine, the blood of the grapes. But Yashuran grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, you grew thick, you are covered with fat. So he forsook Eloah, who made him, and scorned the rock of his deliverance. So understand, Yashuran, Abba Yahuwah's chosen, set apart one, grew fat and grew thick and was covered with fat. And then he was scorned because he was supposed to drink from the rock of his deliverance. And instead, they did not. And so understand, he's talking about this perfect Yashuran that is supposed to drink from his hand, that is supposed to be able to surrender himself as this eagle that I saw that is now gone with the heights of the wind that has taken it into the high place. And he says, for I poured water on the thirsty and floods on the dry ground. I pour my spirit on your seed and my blessing on your offspring. So understand, the Father is the one drawing this people to drink from his hand. He's pouring his water on the thirsty people. Those who are thirsty, they come and they drink from him. And he pours his spirit. Just like I said, when you surrender to him, when you allow yourself to be surrendered, he lifts you on the wings of the ruach of his breath that he pours within you, that he leads you step by step in the direction that you are to go, and that you allow that winds to take you and to fulfill his purposes and his plans. And that's why Yeshua spoke in John chapter 7. Let's go read John chapter 7. In John chapter 7, we read from verses 37. On the last day, the great day of the festival, which is the festival that we're going to come to now. Do you understand why we are preparing our hearts? We are preparing our hearts. We are allowing the Father to be able to prune us, to take us through the fire of the purification. We are seeking his face. We are drawing closer to him in this time. Why? Because we are going to be able to come to the feast of Sukkot, which is the fruit harvest, where he wants to dwell in the sukkah of our hearts. Our lives must bear the fruit that he wants to eat from our lives. And that is why we are going to come to the feast of Sukkot, where he wants to come and give us the living water to drink that only he can give. And now listen to what he says. And on the last day, the great day of the festival, Yahushua stood and cried out, saying, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink. So understand, everyone who is thirsting, let him come to Yahushua, because he was going to give us the living water, so that we may never thirst. When you are in that place of intimacy with him and you are surrendered and submitted to him, he does great and mighty things through your life. And you're constantly in communion with him, and you're drinking from his hand, you're drinking from his mouth, you are drinking from everything that he has to give you. And he's leading you and guiding you in the way that you should go, because it's all by his spirit, by his ruach. And the scripture said, out of his innermost shall flow rivers of living water. And we read that already in Isaiah 12 verses 3, that out of the innermost being there shall flow rivers of living water. And this he said concerning the Spirit, which those believing in him were about to receive. For the set apart Spirit was not yet given, because Yahushua was not yet esteemed. And so, understand something. This is when they said in verse 40, many from the crowd, when they heard the word, said, this truly is the prophet. He was asking them to come. And that's why I say we are in this time now of this month of Elul, where the king is in the field saying, come to me. I've stretched out my tent pegs. I am here. My presence is being stretched out to you now. Draw closer to me so that I can draw closer to you, because I want you to be able to come and allow me to prune those last areas so that you can bear more fruit for me, because He has need of us. Acts chapter 2. Let's look at Acts chapter 2, verses 16, from verses 16 to 18, and it says, "But this is what was spoken by the prophet Joel, and it shall be in the last days, says Eloah, that I shall pour out my Spirit on all flesh. And your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. And also on my male servants and on my female servants I shall pour out my Spirit in those days, and they shall prophesy." And then if we read verse 19, it says, "And I shall show wonders in the heavens above and signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke." And so He wants to pour out His Spirit on all flesh. He wants to pour out His Spirit on all flesh. He wants us to come, and He wants to pour out His Ruach on His seed. My blessing on your offspring. So it's not just for you, but it's for your offspring, for your children and for your children's children. That's why He says He gives a blessing up until the 1,000th generation. So as He pours it out on you, then you pour it out on your children, and your children pour it out on their children. And so it should basically be becoming more and more, provided that they walk in the ways of Yahuwah as you walk in the ways of Yahuwah. We continue to read Isaiah 44 verses 4. "And they shall spring up amongst the grass like willows by streams of water." One says, "I belong to Yahuwah." Another calls Him by name of Yaakov. Another writes with his hand unto Yahuwah and names himself by the name of Israel. Praise Abba. Many are going to come into the kingdom. Many are now coming into truth. And they shall be springing up, and they shall spring up all around, because as the Ruach of Yahuwah is giving the true living water to drink, more and more are coming and wanting to drink from this true living water that is being given to them for them to be able to drink. And so He says and then there will be many that will come and say, "I belong to Yahuwah." Another calls himself by the name of Yaakov. Another writes with his hand unto Yahuwah. And so understand, there are many now, even of the Sephardic Jews, that are coming to realize, there are many now, as they're drawing back and coming back to these truths, they have understood that they actually do come from the house of Israel. They are of the original seed, like I myself am one that, like when I came to the land of Israel for the first time, when the Father said, "This is the land of your inheritance, this is the land where you belong." And then I realized when Elsie started to research my bloodline, because I had people telling me, "Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?" And I said, "No, I'm not Jewish, I'm Portuguese." And then I came to understand that I was actually part of those that survived the Inquisition in Portugal. Actually, my forefathers came out of Spain, already from Spain. And then from there, they went into Italy, and then from there they went into Portugal on my father's bloodline side, because I've been able to research my bloodline all the way back. And we came from Catalonia in Spain. And then from there we went to Italy. And then from there they came into Portugal. And so this is why many are now saying, and they can name himself by the name of Israel, because they understand they do come from that original seed. And that's why there are many, many now from Portugal, from Spain, from Italy, from France, from being scattered, in Mexico and those other countries that are now awakening as they're returning back to these truths. They're going back and they're understanding that they actually come from the house of Israel, because these are the outcasts of the house of Israel that Yahushua came to gather. So there are those that are going to be from the original olive tree. But even if you're not of the original olive tree, even if you haven't found out your bloodline, you are grafted in through Messiah Yahushua. So therefore you are part of the house. You are part of this house of Yashuran. You are part of this upright one. You are part of this endurement one. You are part of this people that are the upright ones that Abba Yahuwah is pouring his spirit out on. Verse 6, thus said Yahuwah, sovereign of Israel and his Redeemer, Yahuwah of hosts, I am the first, I am the last, besides me there is no Eloah. So there he says, the sovereign of Israel and his Redeemer, Yahuwah of hosts, Yahuwah Tsabaot, I am the first, I am the last, besides me there is no Eloah. And so he is saying, he is the Aleph, he is the Tav. He starts with us in Genesis, Bereshit, as Aleph, and he ends with us in Revelation as Tav. And so if we go and we look in Revelation 1, let's go to Revelation chapter 1, and we look at verse 11, where he says, I am the Aleph and the Tav, the first and the last. Write in a book what you see and send it to the 7 assemblies of Asia, to Ephesus and Smyrna and Pergamos and Thyatira and Sardis and Philadelphia and Laodicea. And so this is Yahushua speaking, and he's saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. So you see, the Father and the Son are one, because this is Yahushua speaking, and he's saying, I am the Aleph, I am the Tav. Do you see? They are one. Abba Yahuwah starts in Genesis, him and his Son with him. And then his Ruach, Abba Yahuwah's Ruach, is hovering over the earth. And so understand, the Father and the Son are one. They are one. And then if we look at verses 17, he says again, and when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead, and he placed his right hand on me, saying, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. So who's he seeing? He's seeing Yahushua. And then right at the end, in Revelation chapter 22, verses 13, he says again, this is Yahushua speaking. So this one is Abba Yahuwah speaking when he's saying, I am the first and the last, now in Isaiah 44 verses 6. But this is Yahushua speaking. And he is saying in verse 13, I am the Aleph and the Tav, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. So understand, this is Yahushua speaking here. And so he is Abba Yahuwah, Yahushua are one. And that is why he's saying here, thus says Yahuwah, sovereign of Israel, and his Redeemer. Who is the Redeemer? Yahushua, the Redeemer. Yahuwah of hosts. He's the captain of the army of hosts that appeared to Joshua in Joshua chapter 5. Let's look and see. He comes as the captain of the army of hosts, and this is who the Father is speaking of over here. He's speaking about him, and he's speaking about his son, Yahushua, because in Joshua chapter 5, how many times we've read the scripture where he appears to him as the captain of the army of hosts. And yeah, he says, and he said, Joshua chapter 5 verses 14, and he said, no, for I have now come as captain of hosts of Yahuwah. And Yehoshua fell on his face to the earth and did obeisance and said to him, What is my master saying to his servant? And the captain of the hosts of Yahuwah said to Yehoshua, take your sandals off your foot, for the place where you stand is set apart. And Yehoshua did so. So exactly what was said to Moses is what is being said to Joshua. And who is speaking to him? The captain of the army of hosts, our Redeemer, Yahushua. The captain of the army of hosts, Yahuwah Tzavaot. And now he's speaking of here and he's saying, thus says Yahuwah, sovereign of Israel, and his Redeemer, Yahuwah of hosts. And his Redeemer. Yahushua is the Redeemer. And he is Yahuwah of hosts. He is Yahuwah Tzavaot, the captain of the army of hosts. I am the first, and I am the last. Besides me, there is no Alua. So he is the Aleph, he is the ox, he's the head, he's the provider, he is our strength, he's our leader, he is the first, he is the crown over everything, he is the Father, and he's the one that brings us into unity, because he is unity. And then he is the Tav. So he is the Aleph, he is the Tav. He is the Tav, he's the sign. He's the signature. Yeshua came to engrave us in the palm of his hands, not tattooing us. Please. He doesn't want us to have tattoos. He's not tattooing us. He's engraving us by putting a hole, being able to engrave us in the palms of his hands. His signature. He is the mark. He is the ownership. He's the one who's ownership over us. He was the ultimate sacrifice. He is the judgment. He's the one who's going to release the judgments. He is our covenant. He is salvation. And he's the one who seals up. He's the one who's going to seal us up. Amen. 44 verses 7. And who is like me? Let him call and declare it, and lay it before me, since I appointed the everlasting people, and the events that are coming, and those that do come, let them declare these to them. So here he says again, there is no one like him, for he is the one that foretells the events that are to come. And let me tell you, this chapter is so powerful, because if the Father speaks things, events that are to come, when he spoke through the mouth of Yeshayahu, he was going to make sure that there was going to be no doubt to those people that was going to be in the times that was going to be ahead of them, that they were going to have no doubt that the Father is real and that he speaks, because he's going to speak things through the mouth of Yeshayahu, through the mouth of Isaiah, that was still yet to come, that they were going to read these books and these chapters of this prophetic book to understand that there is no one like Yahuwah, because when he speaks, who can foretell the future? Only he can foretell the future. You know, if you go to fortune tellers, they always make sure that they catch you by telling you the past, because the demons only know your past. They know what your past is about. And that's how they entice you. They entice you by telling you what has already happened in your life, because those are what the demons are proclaiming. But they cannot tell you the future, because only the Father knows the future. No psychic will know the future, unless the Father is going to speak through a psychic, just as he did with, Balaam, Balak, and Balaam. And we read this whole story, because he was going to be using one that was not, he was a prophet that was not one of the Father's prophets, but he was going to speak through his mouth. Because there is no psychic that can look into any ball or any card that is going to be able to tell you the future. So how do they entice you? They listen to the voices of the demons. They listen to the voices of these demons. And then the demons speak. And then that is how they entice you. They tell you all about your past. And that's how they grab you. And then they start to prophesy the future into you, which is all going to be what you're going to walk out at the end of the day. Ask me, I know. I had a psychic telling me everything about what I did in my past. This is when I was in serious trouble before I got saved. I was always warned not to go to these people, but I was going through problems in my life. And so a friend of mine got me to go to a psychic. And how did she grab me? By telling me the past, because she said, you don't really believe the things that I'm saying. Because, you see, I wasn't really a believer, but I did believe in the Father. And I was always told by my mother to not go to these things and not go to these places. But because of the difficulty that I was going through, I decided to go see one. And it's interesting. How did she grab me? By telling me things of my past. And then, when I asked her about the decisions that I needed to make, then she started to prophesy future. Interesting. She was able to tell me what I was to do, which is I did what she told me. But she failed to tell me what I was going to face, which was going to be a lawsuit. So, that's why I say, what do they speak? They speak by the mouth of demons. That's what they speak. And so we continue to read in verse 8. Do not fear nor be afraid. Have I not since made you hear and declared it? You are my witnesses. Is there an allure besides me? There is no other rock. I know not one. So do you see, they use allure in this Bible. It's just not the way we spell it. We don't spell it Aloha. We spell it allure. We write it allure with an L, A-L. And then instead of an O, you can put a U, allure. There is no other rock. I know not one. So Yahweh's telling you again that do not fear. He tells you again not to fear. He tells you again that you are his witnesses, to witness what he is about to do, to witness what he's already done, that you are going to prophesy and you are going to witness what he tells you and what he's going to do in your life. You will be a witness of his greatness for the honor and for the glory of his name. So he wants to reveal himself to you. He wants you to understand that whatever steps you take in your life, in obedience to him, you will be a witness. You will be a testimony for what he has done in your life to bring others into the kingdom. And now he starts to speak from verses 9. When he's now from on until verse 20, he is really going to talk about the futility of putting our trust and our faith in idolatrous things, in the systems of this world, in the ways of the world. He is going to tell us who we should trust. So let us read. Those who make an idol, and all of them are emptiness, and their delights do not profit, and they are their own witnesses. They neither see nor know, so they are put to shame. So you see, why must we put our trust and our faith in things that cannot see, that cannot hear, that cannot prophesy to us the future? But yet we put our trust and our faith. You must understand, we don't have the idols that they had in those days. They had little figurines. We don't have figurines. But I tell you now, we still put our trust and our faith in the works of our hands. And this is what he's going to be able to bring to our attention here in this chapter. Who would form a mighty one or cast an idol that is of no value? See, all his companions are ashamed, and the workmen, they are but men. Let them all be gathered together. Let them stand up. Let them fear. Let them be put to shame altogether. So here we see that he's talking about how people make their own idols and then they worship them. What are the idols that we have made out of our hands today? We have made idols out of our money. We have made idols out of fame. We've made idols out of power. And we deceive ourselves if we expect them to empower us. It is all futile, because it will all be destroyed. Whatever we put our trust in is going to be destroyed in the end. So man in this day and age is putting their trust and their faith in the work of their own hands. We put so much trust in doctors. We put all our trust in the doctors. Like the people went and put their trust in doctors, instead of turning to the one who we should put our trust and our faith in. He's the one that we should put our trust and our faith in. Before we run to anything else, do we seek him first? So, let's continue to read. The craftsman, an iron with tools, works one in the coals, and fashions it with hammers, and works it with the strength of his arms. Even so he shall be hungry, and has no strength. He drinks no water, and is weary. How many people have made their jobs so idolatrous that they put all their time and their energy into their job? It's like my husband was talking to me about one of his clients, and he was saying to me, this client has got so many trucks, and he's got such a turnover, but he spends all his life at work. And my husband was having to minister into his life to say, what are you doing? You are killing yourself slowly by working yourself to a standstill to build your empire. But if something must happen to you, what have you achieved at the end of the day by doing all of that? His children don't see him. His children don't spend any time with him. He's got no time for anything. Him and his wife they live at work. And their children are brought up by people, and they live on takeaways. And tell me, is that the way that we should live? But you see, we can have different idols today that we don't even realize the idol that we build. Because you see, we want more. We're not happy with where we are. We want more and more and more and more. And therefore, it costs us more and more and more in our lives, especially in our flesh man. The carpenter stretches out his rule. He outlines it with chalk. He fashions it with a plane, and he outlines it with a compass, and makes it like the figure of a man, according to the comeliness of a man, to remain in the house. He cuts down cedars for himself, and takes cypress and oak, which he raised among the trees of the forest. He has planted a pine, and the rain nourishes it. So understand, here we see Abba creates the trees, but man will use what he created and make an idol out of it. He puts his trust in it and worships it. So understand, this is exactly what we do. What are people doing today? What are people doing today? What are they doing? He says, he cuts down the cedars for himself and takes a cypress and an oak, and he raises amongst the trees of the forest, and he plants to the pine, and rain nourishes it. And it shall be for a man to burn, for he takes some of it and warms himself. And he also kindles it, and shall bake bread. He also makes a mighty one, and bows himself to it. And has made it a carved image, and falls down before it. Half of it he shall burn in the fire. With this half he eats meat. He roasts a roast, and is satisfied. He also warms himself and says, I am warm. I have seen the fire. And the rest of it he makes into a mighty one. His carved image. He falls down before it and worships, prays to it, and says, deliver me, for you are my mighty one. So you see, this is everything of what are people doing today. So he says, you take the tree that I created, and the rain that I use to water it. And now you will make it for you to do your things with it. And then when you've used it, for you to cook with it, for you to warm yourself with it, for you to then do everything you need with it. You carve something out of it, and then you're going to make it into a mighty one, and then you're going to bow to it. So you take the strength that the Father's given you. You take the health that the Father's given you. You take the body that the Father has given you. And what do you create out of it? Instead of it being all for the glory and the honor of His name and all for His kingdom, that you are set apart for His kingdom, you take everything that He's given you and you do it for yourself, and you make yourself an idol, and you become the king of your castle, as opposed to making it about Him. And so what are people doing today? They're taking the DNA, the very DNA that He has created for us to be able to be created in His image. And we have modified it. We've modified the DNA and made a hybrid being out of it. And now we are proud of what we have created. And now we will make more hybrid beings until eventually we will self-destruct, because man is creating hybrid beings that in the end will destroy them. It will destroy their jobs. It will destroy what they stand for. So the more they're going to create these beings and robots and all this AI, artificial intelligence that they are creating, eventually man is going to create beings that they themselves are not going to be needed. And so this is what we have done. We have no need of the Father anymore. And now they become the creator. They become a God unto themselves. And this is what these people do, like Elon Musk and like this other Noah, this man, Noah, he's this Jewish man that has raised up the scientist, that is saying, we have no need of a God in our lives because we have done everything. So understand, man is the one who created you, gave you breath in your body. He's the one who can take that breath from you at any time. But now you become a God unto yourself, and now you become so powerful with everything that you create, and think that you are the God now. You become your own God, your own idol. They do not know nor understand, for He has smeared their eyes from seeing and their hearts from understanding. And no one recalls, and it is His heart, no one recalls it to His heart, nor is there knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burnt half of it in the fire, and I have also baked bread on its coals. I have roasted meat and eaten it, and shall I make the rest of it an abomination? Shall I fall down before a log of wood? So do you see what I'm saying? What is He saying? If we would put as much time seeking Him as we do in all the idols that we have created for ourselves, we create things out of our own hands that He has given us the ability to be able to create, and then we make it about ourselves. Then we receive the riches out of it and the power out of it, and then we become so powerful, like all these idols that you see, these sport idols. Who gave them the talent? Who gave them the talent for that sport? Who gave them the talent to be able to do what they do? Is He not the one who gives the talent? And now we make it about us. And now we say that it's us that has been able to become great and famous. And now all the wealth that we claim from that, the same as you'll take these people that have got beautiful voices that the Father has created, that are supposed to be His worship leaders. And now what? We're going to use that talent to exploit it, to make money out of it. Is that really what we're supposed to have done with it? So you see, everything that He's saying over here is He's saying, I am the one who's created you. I am the one who's given you all these resources. I am the one who's given you everything that you have. So you see, this is exactly what He said in Deuteronomy chapter 8. I just feel led to go and read it at the moment, where He's talking about Deuteronomy chapter 8. He tested them in the wilderness, and He gave them all these things, and He said, he says in Deuteronomy chapter 8 from verse 1, God to do every command which I command you today, that you might live, and shall increase and go in, and shall possess the land of which Yahuwah swore to your fathers. And you shall remember that Yahuwah your Lord led you all the ways these 40 years in the wilderness to humble you, to prove you, to know what is in your heart, whether you guard his commands or not. So you see, everything that is being given to us is, will we still serve him? Will we still guard his commands? Even though we have all this that we have created out of our own hands. And he said he humbled you and let you suffer hunger and fed you with manna which you did not know, nor did your fathers know, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yahuwah. And so then if we go on and we see, he says here from verses 13, and your herds and your livestock increase, your silver and your gold are increased, and all that you have is increased, that your heart then becomes lifted up, and you forget Yahuwah your Lua, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim and from the house of bondage. So understand, when he starts to increase the things in your life and he starts to give you more and more, do you forget the one who's given you everything? And do you forget the fact that it's not for you, that it belongs to him? And he says, who led you through the great and awesome wilderness, fiery serpents and scorpions, thirst where there was no water, who brought you water for you out of the flint rock, who fed you in the wilderness and with manna which your fathers did not know, in order to humble you and try you, to do you good in the end. Then you shall say in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand have made for me this wealth. Do you know how many people actually think that? It's what I've achieved. It's what I've acquired. But you shall remember Yahuwah your Lua, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, in order to establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is today. So understand, he is the one who has given us the power to obtain everything that we have. And so we continue to read. Feeding on ashes, a deceived heart turns him aside, and he does not deliver his being, nor says, is there not a lie in my right hand? Now he starts to speak. You see, here Abba pleads with Israel. Here we're going to hear, remember these matters, O Yaakov and Israel, for you are my servant. So you see, he tells you, it is futile. We are fools to think that we can make our own gods, our own idols that cannot help us. Not one bit, they're not going to help us. We think that the idols, the statues, the wood, the stone, that which we make out of our own hands, that is going to be able to help us. We must understand there is nothing that is going to be able to help us. No strength of our own. We cannot put our trust in our own arm of the flesh. I have formed you. You are my servant, O Israel. Do not forget me. You see what happens? Many times we pray certain prayers and the Father gives us what we ask for, just like King Hezekiah asked for life to be extended. What did he get out of the life that was extended? Destruction. Because his heart became prideful and he fell away from the Father. I shall wipe out your transgressions like a cloud, your sins like a mist. Return to me, for I shall redeem you. So he's saying, come back to him. Come back. Repent and come back. And so he pleads with us in this time. He's pleading with us. And so if we see what happened to King Nebuchadnezzar, what happened to him? Let's go and read in Daniel chapter 4, because at the end of the day, he's trying to show us we are not to become prideful of what we have achieved in our lives. Nothing of what we achieve is of ourselves. Don't stand back and say, oh, look at the empire that I have created. No. The Father has given you the ability to be able to create everything that you have. And he can give it to you in the one day and he can take it from you in the next. So that is why we should never be proudful in our hearts of anything that we have achieved, because at the end of the day, if He doesn't give us the power to be able to achieve anything, and that's why I stand in awe of when I see these athletes and they stand and they boast with their medallions, and how many of them will give any glory or honor to the Father. And these actors will stand there, hold up their trophies, because look at what I've achieved. And at the end of the day, they are mere dust. From dust they came, and from dust they shall return. And that is why I'm saying, all these arrogant and prideful things that man has achieved, to take the fame and the fortune away from the Father, to take the focus, the fame and the focus. The only fame that there should be is of Abba Yahuwah Himself. His name needs to be exalted. His name needs to be raised on high. It's not about it's not about our name being raised on high. Yes, we are vessels that get used for Him. And yes, He will lift up those whom He wants to lift up. But those people must understand they are a mere speck of dust without Him. Absolutely nothing without Him. And so here we read from verse 28 in Daniel chapter 4, and it says, all this came upon sovereign Nebuchadnezzar. Now understand, this is when Daniel, there was a dream that he had, and he saw writing on the wall, and now he is interpreting what all of this was. He doesn't know what this was, and now Daniel has come to be able to seek. He's come to Daniel to be able to ask him what it was that he saw. He saw a tree, and he saw all these, there was, Nebuchadnezzar, the sovereign, had these visions, and he got all these magicians to be able to come. And he had a dream, and it frightened him. And he got all these magicians to come, but nobody was able to interpret the dream. And here comes Daniel, and he interprets it, and he says, all this came upon the sovereign Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12 months, he was walking about the palace of the reign of Babel. And now listen to what he says. And the sovereign spoke and said, is not this great Babel, which I myself have built, for the house of the reign, by the mighty of my power, for the esteem of my splendor? The word was still in the sovereign's mouth, when a voice fell from the heavens, and the sovereign Nebuchadnezzar, to you it is spoken, the reign has been taken away from you, and you are driven away from men, and your dwelling is to be with the beasts of the field. You are given grass to eat like oxen, and 7 seasons shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High is the ruler in the reign of men, and He gives it to whomever He wishes. Let's put the Father in His rightful place. Who do we think we are? Then if we look and see in verse 34, and at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted my eyes to the heavens, and my understanding returned to me. I blessed the Most High, and praised and made Him great, who lives forever, whose rule is an everlasting rule, and His reign is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are of no account, and He does as He wishes with the host of the heavens and among the inhabitants of the earth, and there is none to strike against His hand, or say to Him, what have you done? So do you see, this king, that was a heathen king, through Daniel, came to understand, who are you? Who are you, O king, to think that you can exalt yourself above Yahuwah? But yet, how arrogant and prideful do we see these rulers and kings of the earth in this hour? And that is why they're going to be judged. When Yahushua comes with a sword and his army, and he's going to judge the nations of the world, and he's going to judge all those that have exalted themselves in this time and in this life. He says, sing, O heavens, for Yahuwah shall do it. Shout, O depths of the earth, break forth into singing. Every tree in it, for Yahuwah shall redeem Yaakov and make himself clear in Israel. So you see, we are to sing and worship him at all times. This is what he wants. He wants our worship. He will redeem us. He is the only one to be praised. He is the one worthy of our worship. Every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess that Yahushua is the Messiah. Every knee is going to bow. There is only one worthy to be praised. No one is worthy to be praised. He is the one who has given the breath in our body. How dare we worship the works of our hands? Thus said Yahuwah your Redeemer, and he who formed you from the womb. I am Yahuwah doing all, stretching out the heavens all alone, spreading out the earth with none besides me. So you see, who is there besides him? He is the one who is stretching out the heavens. He's the one who stretches out the heavens. And yet, right now, man, even now, is interfering with the weather and the weather patterns. And they are the ones that are putting all these chemtrails in the sky to be able to change weather patterns. So do you see, they're wanting to formulate clouds and bring weather patterns, and they are the ones changing everything because they're trying to destroy the very creation that Abba Yahuwah has created. But for how long do you think they can continue to do this? For how long? For how long before the Father is going to judge? Frustrating the signs of the babblers and driving diviners mad, turning wise men backwards and making their knowledge foolish. So do you see? He will shut the mouths of the diviners. He will shut the mouths of the psychics. And he will shut the mouths of the false prophets who prophesy lies. Even those who think they are wise will be foolish in his sight. He is the one who's going to shut the mouth of all these false prophets that spoke words that were contrary to his word. And this is exactly what he's saying, because at the end of the day, through the mouth of Isaiah, he is speaking things that the false prophets in the time of Jeremiah are going to speak contrary to what he says. And at the end of the day, Father is still going to do exactly what Yeshayahu has spoken. Exactly what Yeshayahu has spoken is going to be done. And so he says, confirming the word of his servant and completing the counsel of his messengers, who say of Jerusalem, be inhabited, and of the cities of Yehudah, they shall be built, and her ruins raised up by me. So you see, Father has spoken. Here we see how Isaiah is prophesying. He prophesied of the future. And the words by all the prophets that have gone forth. So we must understand, the Father spoke. He spoke through, let's go and have a look and see in Jeremiah chapter 32, because he's saying, confirming the words of his servant, and completing the counsel of his messengers. Now understand, Isaiah was one of the first prophets that was prophesying, truly prophesying all these things that was eventually going to come upon. I mean, he, I think, lived up until Manasseh. They say that Manasseh was the one that had him killed after Hezekiah. But if we go have a look at Jeremiah chapter 32, so I mean, understand, Isaiah is prophesying things in the future kingdom of when Yashuran is going to be restored back to the Father as a people. And so in Jeremiah chapter 32 from verses 14, He says, thus says Yahuwah of hosts, the Eloah of Israel, take these deeds, both these deeds of purchase, which is sealed, and this deed, which is open, and put them in an earthen vessel, so that they may remain many days. For thus says Yahuwah of hosts, the Eloah of Israel, houses and fields and vineyards shall again be bought in this land. So we know that it's going to be ruins, that, Yehudah, they shall be built and his ruins raised up by me. So he's going to once again restore that which was destroyed. And then if we have a look at Jeremiah chapter 32 verses 44, he turns around and he says, fields shall be bought for silver and deeds signed and sealed and witnesses be called in the land of Benjamin and in the places around Jerusalem and in the cities of Yehudah and in the cities of the mountains and in the cities of the low country and in the cities of the south, for I shall turn back their captivity, declares Yahuwah. So he's going to once again, come and restore the land and rebuild the land, even though there's going to be destruction on the land. Who is saying to the deep, be dry, and rivers, I dry up. So you see, that which he proclaims out of his mouth, he will do. Confirming the word of his servant, verse 28. Who is saying to Koresh, he is my shepherd, and he completes all my pleasure. Even saying to Jerusalem, let her be built, and to the Hekel, let her foundations be laid. Wow. Now I need you to understand. This is what a powerful prophet, Yeshayahu, truly was. He was such a powerful prophet because why? He is prophesying of Koresh. Who is Koresh? Koresh is King Cyrus, the king of Babel. He was already prophesying about the King Cyrus of Babel, of the time of when Daniel was going to pray, so that King Cyrus was then going to be able to allow his people to be restored, to once again build the temple. The temple was going to be destroyed, and from the time of King Cyrus, he was going to then have the people be restored back to the land, back to Jerusalem, to once again build the temple. And this was way, way before it happened. But remember what he says, that he is going to confirm the word of his servant and completing the counsel of his messengers, who says to Jerusalem, be inhabited. So Yeshayahu is prophesying such powerful prophecies that he was going to be a witness for the Father for decades ahead of him. When they were going to have to read this book, they were going to understand that there was no other mighty one apart from Yahuwah, because everything that he spoke surely came to pass out of the mouth of that prophet. Now I ask you, if everything that he spoke came to pass out of the mouth of this mighty prophet, then the future things that he's speaking, that's still to come, is going to be, it will come to pass from what he has spoken. Father is going to have a people that are going to raise up, and they will have a Messiah that will lead them, and he will have a reign, and he will lead these people. And so we need to understand that we need to ask ourselves questions after this chapter, where he spends so many verses speaking about the idolatrous, futile worship of the works of our own hands, that we need to ask ourselves the question, who created us? By who were we created? Who is the one that receives all the worship? Who gave us the breath that we have in our body? Who do we put our trust and our faith in? What do we put our trust and our faith in? What do we put above him? Who do we turn to first thing? What do we turn to? Or who do we turn to? What is the most important thing in our lives? And I don't like to say thing, because you can have it be a thing. I know mine is a person, and he's Abba Yahuwah. Who is the most important person in your life? Is it your children? Is it your spouse? Is it your grandchildren? Who is more important to you? Whom do I look to for ultimate truth? Who do I look to for the truth? If these people speak words that are contrary to what is written in this Bible, why do we continue to listen? We need to come back to this Bible. Whatever words are being spoken and whatever sermons are being preached that is contrary to what is written in this Bible does not come from the mouth of the Father, because the Father will not go against his own word. And so this is his final authority. And who do I look to for my security and my happiness? Who is the source of my security and my happiness? Who? Who is the one leading your life? Who is the one in charge of your future? Who's the one that you turn to for everything in your life? Who is pulling the strings of your heart? Who's pulling the strings of your life? Who do you put your trust and your faith in? What do you put your trust and your faith in? And when all of that is removed, who is left in your life? Who is the one that has given you breath in your body? Because he's the only one worthy of our praise. And he's the only one worthy to be praised. May Abba bless you all. Shalom, shalom.